How do we understand quiescence? How do you understand it?
Great question. So that sort of takes us more to the power stream of the impact of that first study, because as I mentioned before, I was fresh out of Vanderbilt. I had studied political science and philosophy and sociology. And democratic theory, where I'd been educated, was that if in an open system, if in a democracy, people have a problem, then they can organize and raise their voices, and they have a grievance and get something done about it. And what really struck me in entering that area was, here as an outsider, I'm talking now particularly about this Clearfork Valley area where the British company owned things. And you saw the problem everywhere. You saw the strip mining, you saw the poor company houses, you sensed the control of the company. They had political influence, they affected who got food stamps and who didn't, etc. But I couldn't find examples at that time of people protesting around it. I went through all the, you went through all the court records and I didn't see lawsuits. I went to all the minutes of county council meetings and you didn't see people coming to raise their voice. And yet theories of American power and a pluralist democracy is that that's what you do. So that really said, I was really struck by that. And at the time, as I said, I was studying at Oxford, and I had lucky to have a tutor named Stephen Lukes, who at the time was writing this book called Power, A Radical View. And this challenged the dominant American stream of thinking about power, which it had come out of the pluralist thinkers like Robert Dahl and others. And that assumed, sorry if this is too technical, that assumed that in an open system, people would have grievances and you could tell who had power by who won and who lost in the public arena. But Stephen and others said, no, there's a second dimension of power, and that is the way that power is kept out of the public arena and kept off of the agenda. So we can see if people have grievances, but if they don't appear, we can assume that there's some blockage going on. But then Stephen actually extended that further. He said, no, sometimes people may not be aware of their grievance at all. Or just as effectively, they may not be aware that they can do anything about it. And this is what we came to call invisible power, or the internalization and the acceptance of an unjust status quo. So we had what was called the three dimensions of power. The first in an open system, and you could study power about who won and who lost by looking at the political system. The second is what was called the mobilization of bias, the ways that the system kept people's voices in certain issues off of the arena. And the third was this way that he said the most insidious form of power was to keep people from conceiving of a problem or that they can do anything about it at all. So those ideas really struck with me, and they resonated with what I had just experienced. And I told him what I had just experienced, and he said, why don't you write a paper about it and give the next seminar? And that ended up being this book on power and powerlessness, which demonstrated in this valley over a 100-year period how you could build a system where even in the face of glaring inequality, people were quiescent. People, at least publicly, you didn't see action emerging. And of course, at the time, this challenged the kind of culture of poverty thesis that was so important in the region, and has been used to blame people all over the world, to say it's the poor people's own fault, that it's their culture of apathy or laziness, or they just don't know how to organize. And that was very much a dominant view within the Appalachian studies literature. And some of us during that period were pushing back on this, saying, no, we have to understand inaction as a consequence of structural power, not as a cultural trait of a particular group.